and simple. So this was just a brief summary of the poem for you, as well as a few key points to keep in mind before we analyze the poem in detail. Let us now get to the task, and we will study the poem itself. We will see how Wordsworth develops the character in the poem, how he develops the relationship with the character in the poem, how he develops the relationship with you, with the readers, and how when all is in consonance, one message, he's able to give one message. So let's look at the detailed analysis of the poem. I will read out the lines for you and then paraphrase them for you. The first, let's begin with the first stanza. The solitary reaper. Behold her, single in the field, yon solitary Highland lass. In these two lines, there are certain words that have been highlighted for you, and they are highlighted with a purpose. The beautiful girl is working alone in the cotton fields of Scotland, which is the Highland. Lass, let's look at some of the words that may have that you may not be familiar with. Lass is a young maiden or a young girl, and yon is from yonder, which is an old English word, but it means that one. So the line is, behold her. Wordsworth wants you to be part of him and to be able to see that girl and to look at her. So he says, look at this girl, single in the field. She is working all by herself. She's alone, she's single in the field. And yon solitary Highland lass. The word solitary is again emphasized. Single and solitary are synonymous. So it is the loneliness, the solitariness, the singleness of the girl that we see being highlighted in these two lines. He says that solitary Highland lass, young girl. So he is introducing the central character to you through these first two lines. And the next two lines, reaping and singing by herself, stop here or gently pass. Reaping. The word reaping. Reaping is to cut grain for harvest with a scythe or a sickle or a reaper. And so the process of cutting the grain, the process of cutting long grass is called reaping, and it is done with either a scythe or a sickle or a reaper. And a scythe is a curved blade. You must have seen it. We use it often when we need to cut the long grass in the fields or in the gardens. So the poet in these lines says, draws our attention to the action, to the work of this young girl. What is it that she's doing in the fields? She is reaping. So she's working, she's cutting the grass, she's cutting the grain in the fields, and she's also singing. But Wordsworth reminds us that she is singing by herself. She's not singing for anyone in particular. She's not singing for an audience. She's not singing for the poet. She's not singing for you. She's not singing for me. She is engrossed in her work, but she's singing by herself, for herself. Stop here or gently pass. And look at these words here. Stop here or gently pass. She's working, she's cutting, and she's collecting the grain. So sometimes she stops to cut the grain. Sometimes when that task is done, she gently moves on. But these words show the fluid-like movement of the girl. They are not abrupt, they are not harsh, they are not crude, but they are fluid-like and they are gentle, and she is engrossed, totally engrossed in her work. She's oblivious of her surroundings, and is doing only her own work. Through this phrase, by herself, once again her loneliness is emphasized. In the first two lines we saw how Wordsworth emphasizes her solitariness. Here again he says, when he says by herself, her loneliness, her singleness is emphasized. And the poet asks us not to disturb her in her work and her singing. He says that we should only watch her, or we should gently pass away from the scene. So the scene is so beautiful for the poet that he does not want even to disturb it. The next two lines: alone she cuts and binds the grain, and sings a melancholy strain. Now let's look at the Wordsworth. Again the word begins with alone. The line begins with, again the line begins with alone. Singleness, solitariness, by herself, and now alone. You see, Wordsworth is again emphasizing the loneliness, the solitariness of the girl, how she is all alone in that natural world, with no one to disturb her and with no one to listen to her. So alone she cuts and binds the grain. Grain, you know, is it's the fruit of the cereal grass. It may be these may be cotton fields, or these may be wheat fields. So she is cutting the grain, and she's binding them also later on. And at the same time she's singing. But here in this line, Wordsworth will tell you what she's singing. She's not singing in a happy strain. He tells us that she's singing a melancholy. Melancholy means sad, and strain is a tone or the tune. So she's singing in a melancholic musical voice. So again her actions, her movements are described to you. She's cutting and binding the grain, but at the same time she's singing. But Wordsworth tells you she's not singing a happy song. And then the last two lines of this stanza, he says, oh listen, for the vale profound is overflowing with the sound. So vale profound, let's look at the words first. Vale profound means a deep valley, and overflowing means full of. The whole valley is full of, reverberating or resounding with a voice. So Wordsworth says, oh listen. So he's now inviting us, he is inviting you, he's inviting the readers to listen to him also. Or maybe he's inviting the whole natural world to listen to the song of this world. Because then he says the vale profound. Now he's laying before you the scene. He's exposing the scene for you. He says that the valley is deep. So this girl is the field where this girl is reaping, cutting and reaping the crops. This lies in a valley. It is surrounded by hills on all four sides maybe, and it is a valley in which she is working. So he says, as she sings, the whole valley is filled with her sound, is filled with her music, is filled with her song. So first it was, you notice the contradiction in the earlier lines. Wordsworth says she's singing by herself. So nobody else is singing with her. She's not singing for anybody else. But here he tells you that the whole valley is singing with her. And it is as if she's singing to the whole world. So the whole valley is now listening to her and is filled with her sweet song. And there is a sense of joy and respect for the girl and her song in Wordsworth's remark. When you read Wordsworth's remark, oh listen, you see. So he's so happy to hear her that he is inviting all of us to be part of this scene. So this was the first stanza. Now let's look at the second stanza of the poem. In the second stanza of the poem, Wordsworth is going to take you away from this scene, away from this setting, and will take you to the far off different places. He's going to test your imagination. He's going to take you to new worlds, to new different worlds. And this is where the role of imagination that was so crucial to romantics, that you will witness and you will understand. So in the second stanza, a new poetic device is also introduced. Wordsworth is going to use what we call metaphor. He's going to use two metaphors. Metaphors are direct comparisons. These are direct comparisons. These are comparisons which are drawn without the help of words like as and like, which is what we call a simile. So Wordsworth is going to use two metaphors, and through these two metaphors he is going to describe to you the beauty of the song of this girl. So remember that it is a song of the girl that has created that mood in him, that has caused him to imagine, and that has caused his mind to reach out to far-fetched lands. So it is this song that he's going to compare to some other things. So let's look at the second stanza. He says, no nightingale did ever chant more welcome notes to weary bands of travellers in some shady haunt among Arabian sands. Some of the words that may confuse you are highlighted for you, and before I explain the lines, maybe we can look at the words. In the first line, the word chant. Chant means a simple melody or a song. Okay, but chanting is associated with repetition. So a chant is a repetition of the sounds, the repetition of a song, it's a repetition of a poetic enterprise. And in the second line, it's the word notes. Notes also refers to here it refers to the musical notes, but again meaning the song. To the weary bands, weary means tired, and bands are the travelers. Shady haunt is a shady haunt. Haunt is a safe place. Haunt is a safe place. Shady means covered. So, but here the poet wants to create for you the image of an oasis in a desert, which is a shady haunt, which is a paradise for those who are traveling in the deserts. It is shady because nowhere else in the desert do travelers find shade. There are no trees. But in the oasis, there is water, there are date trees, there are birds with their songs, which welcome these tired travelers from their long journeys. Let's look at the lines now that you know the meaning of these words. Wordsworth says, no nightingale did ever chant more welcome notes to weary bands of travelers in some shady haunt. The first comparison or the metaphor that he uses for the song of the girl is the nightingale. The girl's song is compared first to the nightingale's song. Before we look into the further detail, I'd like you to understand why this bird is significant for the poets, and especially for the Romantic poets. Wordsworth feels that this girl's or this maiden song surpasses the song of the nightingale. In beauty, in charm, it surpasses the song of the nightingale, as it is heard in the Arabian deserts by the tired traveler. The nightingale is a bird, and it gets its name because it sings at night as well as during the day. And it means the night songstress, because the bird sings in the night also. That is why the word nightingale is given to it. And the bird is famous for its song. The bird is famous for its beautiful song. In our part of the world, it is known as bulbul. But the bulbul or the nightingale that we have here is not the same as we have in some other parts of the world, like in Iran, for instance, or in the West. Those are really singing birds with musical voice quality. Now, the song of the nightingale is loud, and it gets louder when it is in the urban environments in order to overcome the background noise. So you see how clever the bird is. And the nightingale is an important symbol for the poets for all ages, starting from the Greek classical literature up till the modern times. Nightingale is an important bird for all poets, for all writers. Homer evoked nightingale in his Odyssey, but he related it to the classical myth of Philomela. This young girl was turned into a nightingale after she avenged her rapist, who were her sister's husband. And this story, based on the classical myth, has ever since been repeated in most of the Western literary works. And several Middle English period writers or poets, also including Chaucer, you must have heard of him, and Gower, they have used the bird song to depict sorrowful lament in the tradition of this Greek myth. During this Romantic era, the bird became even more important. It acted as a muse. It inspired the poets in their act of creation. It was a master of a superior art that could inspire the human poet. So the nightingale became the master of a superior art, and it inspired the human poet. For Wordsworth, the bird is the voice of nature, we'll see. For Keats and Shelley, it is an idealized poet. For Shelley, Shelley wrote in his defense of poetry, "A poet is a nightingale who sits in darkness and sings to cheer its own solitude with sweet sounds." So you see different romantic poets in different times have romanticized this bird, the nightingale. So coming back to the lines, we see that Wordsworth is telling us that the song of the nightingale is beautiful. It is beautiful because it is a welcoming sound. It is a welcoming song to the tired travelers in the Arabian deserts. Because when they hear the song of the nightingale, they know that an oasis is near at hand. They know that water and food and shelter and shade is near at hand. So the sound of the nightingale gives them happiness, gives them joy. It welcomes them. It takes them out of their misery, and it gives them rest, and it gives them peace. And this song of nightingale, now Wordsworth compares to the song of the girl, to the song of this young girl. But he feels that the song of the girl has more power, more enchanting than the song of the nightingale and the effect of this nightingale song on the travelers. So the nightingale song is compared to the song of the girl and is found lacking when it is compared to the song of the girl. And on the other hand, the travelers are compared to the effect of the girl's song on Wordsworth. And once again, the effect of the girl's song on Wordsworth is far greater than, as Wordsworth tells us, is the effect of the song of the nightingale on the travelers. We now move on to the second part of the same stanza, of the second stanza. Now, a second comparison is made. Let me first read out the lines for you. Wordsworth says, "A voice so thrilling never was heard in springtime from the cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest Hebrides." Let's look at the Wordsworth. He says thrilling. Thrilling means causing intense excitement and pleasure. And the cuckoo bird, cuckoo. Again, the second comparison is with a bird. Cuckoo is also a solitary bird. Cuckoo is a solitary bird, which it seldom occurs in pairs. And it is generally known as a shy bird. It is more often heard than seen. Again, there are various forms of the cuckoo bird. Again, there are various forms of the cuckoo bird. In our part of the world, it is known as a quail. We hear the sound of the quail. We hear the song of the cuckoo, the quail, as we call it in Urdu, in the monsoon season especially. But we hardly ever see the bird, but we can hear its loud creaking, croaking voice. The cuckoo bird is regarded in Europe as the first harbinger of spring. The song of the cuckoo reminds people that spring is now near, that winter is dying, the winter is going, and the spring is coming. And the next word is Hebrides. Hebrides are the farthest islands. They are off the mainland Scotland. In the first 4 lines of this stanza, you just notice that Wordsworth first took your imagination as far as Arabia, to the Arabian deserts, to the Arabian deserts, to the Arabian sand. And now in these 4 lines, he's taking you to these islands, to these Hebrides, these islands off the coast of Scotland. And he is doing exactly what he did in the previous lines. He's comparing the song of the Scottish girl to the song of the cuckoo bird, which is heard in the Hebrides, which is heard in these islands, breaking the silence of the sea. And the song of the cuckoo bird is associated with the return of life, vitality, and spring after the harsh winters. So again, the song is a sign of life, it is a sign of joy, it is a sign of happiness. But yet again, Wordsworth wants you to draw the comparison between the song of the cuckoo and its effect, and the song of the maiden and her song, the effect of her song. And he wants to say that the song of the maiden and the effect of the song of the maiden was far greater than either of these 2 birds. Let's look at the third stanza now. I'll read out the first 4 lines. Wordsworth says, "Will no one tell me what she sings?" This is a question. He says, "Will no one tell me what she sings? Perhaps the plaintive numbers flow for old unhappy far off things and battles long ago." Plaintive, let's look at the words now. Plaintive numbers, plaintive also refers to the tone, the music, so or the sadness. So plaintive refers to the sad music of the song. Wordsworth here wants to know basically the content of the song that she's singing. So he is curious now as to what the girl is singing. In this stanza, we are back to the scene. We are back to where this girl is working in the fields and is singing all by herself. And Wordsworth is now wondering what she may be singing, because he cannot understand her language, because he does not understand what she sings. He does not know the content of her song, but he makes guesses, and he makes guesses. He says that she may be singing about some old, some unhappy, some far off things, or she may be thinking of old battles. He says that her song is not about happiness. It's not a love song. The music, as Wordsworth had told you in the first stanza, was melancholic. So he says that it cannot be a happy song. In the same stanza, next 4 lines, Wordsworth keeps on guessing. He says, or is it some more humble lay, familiar matter of today, some natural sorrow, loss or pain that has been and may be again? Let's look at the words again first. Humble lay is a sad song. Wordsworth again wondering what the song may be about. He says what it may be about. So he poses 2 more questions. Is it some more humble lay? Is it a sad song or a familiar matter of today? Is this song about today? And then in the next line he says some natural sorrow, loss or pain that has been. That has been means in the past. So first he says whether it was a matter of today, whether the girl is singing of something related to present. But then he says, is it about something that has been, that was in the past? And then he says, and maybe again. Maybe again, meaning it may be about the future. So he is basically connecting the 3 time periods. He connects the past to the present and to the future. And it is through this connection he gives sublimity, he gives universality to this girl and to her song. Her song reflects today. Her song reflects that has been. Her song also reflects that may be again. Her song is for today. Her song has been for the past. Her song may be for the future. So her song has meaning, has relevance, has message for today, for has been, and for maybe again, for the past, for the present, and for the future. This is how he gives it significance, and this is how this character becomes a sublime character. From an ordinary, she becomes a sublime character. You will see that in this stanza, the emphasis is once again on the pain and loss, and on the sadness and on the melancholy, because he keeps on saying that she may be singing of some sorrow, about some sorrow or some loss or some pain, or some battles. So it is all about loss, sorrow, pain, battles, but it is not about something to do with happiness. Let's not look at the fourth stanza of the poem. Wordsworth once again describes the scene for us here in this stanza. Let me read out the first 4 lines for you. He says, whatever the theme the maiden sang, as if her song could have no ending, I saw her singing at her work and over the sickle bending. He recreates the scene for you in these lines, the same scene that he recreated for you in the first stanza. The only difficult word in these lines is sickle. In the 4th line, the sickle bending. Sickle is an instrument with which we cut the grass. It is like a scythe. It is a curved blade. So he says, whatever the theme because in the previous stanza he was trying to find out what she was thinking about, so he was trying to discover the themes, the central idea of her song. So he says, now I'm not bothered about the theme, I'm not interested in the theme, I'm not interested in the content, I'm not interested in the subject matter of her song. I don't care if I don't understand what she was singing. He says, whatever the theme the maiden sang, as if her song could have no ending. He says, whatever she was singing about, her song seemed to go on. It seemed to have no ending. It seemed to be about a story that that has no ending, that is never ending. But it is this, the beauty of this song. It is the effect of this song on Wordsworth that makes him feel this way, that makes him feel that it is never ending, that it is without an ending. And then he then once again emphasizes for you her movements and her work, and he says, I saw her singing at her work. So she's singing at her work, and over the sickle bending, naturally she's cutting the grass, she's cutting the grain, so she is bending. These last 4 lines of this last stanza of the poem are important lines, often remembered, often memorized, and often quoted, and often carrying the gist of the whole poem. So they are important, and you need to also memorize them. You need to remember them. Wordsworth says, I listened, motionless and still, and as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart I bore, long after it was heard no more. So he says, let's look at the words again. He says, I listened, I listened. And how did he listen? He says, motionless and still. Motionless, meaning without movement. The girl, you remember, was moving around in the field, cutting and binding the grain, and she was singing also. But Wordsworth, when he's listening to her song, he says, it had so absorbed me that I became motionless and still. So he emphasizes the same thing. Motionless and still mean almost the same thing. They're synonymous words. It was so great was the effect of the song on him that he could not move, that he stayed still, he stayed at his place, kept looking on the girl and on the scene before him and listening to the song. In the next line then he says, and as I mounted up the hill. Now he says, as I mounted up the hill. Now there is movement. He says, as I mounted up the hill. The poet has begun to move now. He realizes that he has to go. He realizes that it is time to move on. So he starts climbing the hill, and he says, as I was climbing the hill, as I was mounting up the hill, the music in my heart I bore. He says, I could not leave that music behind. At first it was only the physical senses, it was his ears that could listen to the song. But then as he's moving up, he says, the music became part of my heart. The music was recorded in my heart. I bore it in my heart. Long